Hello and welcome to the Pocket Meta. I am PulseGlazer, and today we're going to be taking a look at what is different between the Pokemon TCG and the Pokemon Pocket TCG. Anyone who needs to know this will be a beginner-friendly guide. I have very limited experience with the Pokemon TCG, but I was able to find some great help and an amazing article. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to do a primer on the differences that we know of between the Pokemon TCG and the Pokemon Pocket TCG. When Pocket comes out, we'll make a companion video to this that goes further into depth with details we're more sure of. We're also going to define some key terms to the game of Pokemon and speculate on why these changes exist. Before we go any further, though, I'm going to ask you to hit that sub button. We are just starting our journey into the world of Pokemon Pocket. We plan to bring you an extremely high amount of top quality videos for this game, including myself, my friend Gunny T. My son will be doing some pack openings. If you love Pokemon and are excited for this game, hit that sub button. You won't want to miss out on this channel. And if you're willing to give us a like and comment, it helps other people see it. Right below me in a box, little red box, should be a subscribe button. Oh, you don't have to leave the video. Please hit it. All right. So I'm going to first credit the PokeBeach.com article, Pokemon TCG Pocket Gameplay Differences Analyzed. Now, we believe in credits where possible. This article would not be possible without the amazing article from Water Pokemon Master, including all the images and many of the explanations. Please go check out that article. Huge props to them for an amazing amount of work. I also got help from three friends, Pretty Chill, Two Ties, and Caretixley, whose name I spelled wrong somehow, despite literally reading it every day. But Caretixley all helped us out with our explanations for this video. So huge props for them as well. All right, change number one is 3 benched Pokemon versus 5. So the first thing we need to know is what is a benched Pokemon. So in the classic Pokemon game, you would draw your 7 Pokemon. You would need at least 1 Pokemon to be active on the field, and any other Pokemon you had could be benched. Sometimes you want to bench them for what amounts to passive abilities that you can use from the bench. They don't really fight, but they are at risk when they're on the bench because some Pokemon can attack Pokemon on the bench. Simple enough. So some you're going to hold in hand to be played later at a more opportune time, and some you're going to get out there because they're going to have an immediate positive ability. You can switch between these traditionally. Each Pokemon will have a retreat cost, and you want to retreat a Pokemon when specifically when they've got enough damage or when you've got a Pokemon that's better for the specific situation. So it could cost 1 to 4 energy in order to retreat a Pokemon. Each Pokemon has a specific retreat cost. Now, we only have 3 Pokemon. We don't know how many cards we're drawing at the start of the game. It seems like it might be less than 7, but there's no real way to know that at this point. You're going to draw X Pokemon at the start of the game. Up to 3 can be benched, which is a significant amount less, and you still have your 1 active Pokemon. So why make this change? I mean, the fundamental reason you make this change is that 5 Pokemon gives you a lot of options, a lot of decisions, and those decisions, especially in a game that's meant to be simple and fast, can cause paralysis, can lead to not enough time to make the right decision, can cause you problems as a game dev and creator, and cutting that down to only 3 that can be benched at a time fundamentally cuts down that decision tree, makes the game much faster. You can see right here on the screen, again, credit to Pokemon Beach for these videos, you can see the 3 benched Pokemon on each side, and then the 2 active Pokemon. All right, the other big difference is there's a 20-card deck versus a 60-card deck. For most cards, you could have up to 60 cards in classic Pokemon TCG, versus Pocket, which is only giving you 20, and we have no idea how many of each you can run. I would bet almost anything it is not going to be up to 4 copies of each card, however. That would just be too many. This smaller deck size is very likely to increase consistency of decks. You should be seeing the thing your deck wants to do more often, which is going to create very interesting dynamic in terms of power level. It also means that you need less cards to get started. Since we know we're opening packs, you would have to get multiple duplicates. You would have to open pack until you got 4 of the Pokemon you wanted, right? If you want to run 4 copies of them. If you don't have that many copies, if your decks are smaller, you need less cards to get started. That seems like a real great boon for beginners in the game, and again, it works to make the game more quickly. More consistent decks means that the decks, quote-unquote, go off. They do the thing they're trying to do more often, and if they do that, they will be quicker. Change number 3 is prize cards versus points. All right, bear with me now. The main way to win, or the most common way to win, as far as I'm aware, in the classic Pokemon TCG was prize cards. So after you did your starting hand and your benched Pokemon, and your active bench Pokemon, the top 6 cards of your deck would be put into a special zone where they would be prize cards. Every time you knocked out an opponent's Pokemon, you would be able to claim one of those prize cards. As you claim those prize cards, if you claimed all of your prize cards, you won the game. That is not the same. Instead, in Pokemon Pocket, you will earn points. Points are really, really simple. There's no prizes, there's no BS. You knock out a Pokemon, you don't get a prize, you get a point. If that Pokemon is an EX Pokemon, you get 2 points instead. That's a ridiculously huge difference. An EX Pokemon is just a stronger Pokemon. EX Pokemon are sort of how we develop a cost curve in this game. Cost curve being a term for like what Pokemon you want to play early or late. EX Pokemon are extremely strong. You can start with them, but it tends to take them longer to do the thing they want to do. It takes them longer to get power, but the power they output is far greater. So they're generally later game cards, which makes sense because if you're going to lose 2 points, literally double the points you would lose for a regular Pokemon, they have to be significantly stronger. Losing an EX Pokemon is equivalent to losing 2/3 of the game because 3 points is a loss, which is going to be a massive change, right? They used to be 2. Losing an EX Pokemon would generally be 1/3 of the game lost. Instead, now it is freaking huge, right? Like the difference between 1/3 and 2/3, or double the it's just insane. This EX Pokemon are going to be a major change, and for them to be worth playing, they have to be incredibly strong. So why do you make this change? Well, people are going to want to play with the big, flashy, powerful stuff, right? Increasing the risk reward increases the variance in the game of these cards in a way that making the deck smaller, making the different win conditions easier, makes all that simpler. Having this risk reward helps keep the tension in the game, helps keep the game more engaging and more interesting. Versus prize cards, which are kind of complicated and kind of confusing, and because there's so many of them, the game has to be really long. I would assume they experimented with smaller amounts of prize cards, but the games were actually too quick. And in the Pokemon game, right, what you're really trying to do is knock out each other's Pokemon if you're playing like a Nintendo game. So going closer to just knock out opposing Pokemon is a nice, simple thing to accomplish. You can again see in the images on the screen, the knocked out Pokemon at the bottom right under that Pikachu EX is that they're going to lose 2 points for it, and you can see the points at the bottom of each player's screen. All right. There's only one way to win in the new Pocket TCG versus 3 in the TCG. In the classic TCG, you can do all your prize cards game, which we just talked about, but there were 2 other ways. If your opponent runs out of card and they would go to draw a new one in their draw phase, the game is over. They have been successfully, the term for this in Magic is milled out. A milled deck loses. There's no word what happens if your opponent goes through, or you go through, all 20 of your cards in Pokemon Pocket TCG, but they have not announced that as a win condition, so it's interesting to see if it is one at all. The other way is to knock out all the Pokemon. Given that you have at least 4 Pokemon, 1 active and 3 benched, it is very unlikely that all the Pokemon knocked out be a win condition. It looks like it is just the 3 points listed as the only way to win. So this is, again, streamlined. We're taking a complicated concept and streamlining it. In fact, what we're doing is we're combining prize cards, which were like the points of before, right? 6 points, 6 prize cards would win, and we're making it 3. We're having that. And knocking out all the Pokemon, we're saying, okay, instead of getting prize cards, you get those points, those prizes, by knocking out a Pokemon. This is, again, just simplified. This is closer to the video game for anyone who went and got Pokemon Legends Arceus on Switch and wanted to pick up this free mobile game. Now they have a nice, clean way to do that, right? This feels more like the video game, or looks more like the video game. And so you're more likely to be engaged in it if that's where you're coming from. Next up, we have all Pokemon have plus 20 weakness. Excuse me. Pokemon have a specific type they're weak to, and there are different types of Pokemon, as everyone who's ever played one of the video games knows, from plant type, like our friend Bulbasaur, to fire type, like a Charizard, to electric type, like a Pikachu, etc., etc. Now, you can see that Bulbasaur is a plant type Pokemon. He's got a Vine Whip ability of 40. He takes plus 20, however, from a fire attack. Good. What that means is if let's say, for example, I just lost the name. A Charizard attacks with a flame attack. That attack will do 20 more damage to the specific Pokemon. That's a huge amount. As you can see, that's almost a third of that Pokemon's total health, that extra in damage, so we have to pay attention to weaknesses. This is a thing that is multiplicative in the game, usually be like double damage in the classic game, or even in the card game. Or even in the video games, it'll be double damage. Here, it's a set plus 20 damage. So you know that if the Pokemon is weak to something, it's always going to be 20. That's simpler. Multiplication gets complicated, and a simple plus 20 is real easy, and it lets us do different things with the numbers. Multiplying gets out of hand quickly, allows for a lot of one-hit KOs and stuff like that. 20 changes that math. So again, if Bulbasaur is going to Vine Whip something that's weak to plant types, it will do 60 damage, not 40. So it'll always just be plus 20 more. That's nice and simple. And hey, this isn't a new thing. Apparently the Diamond and Pearl era, the Nintendo DS era of Pokemon in 2006 did this exact thing. So you make this change just for simplicity's sake. Having different numbers there is complicated. It is something you can change as the game develops and matures. You can give Pokemon different things like keywords that increase weakness damage. It lets you do different things with abilities to increase or decrease weakness damage of your Pokemon. And having it as a set amount makes it much more easy to balance. And balance is going to be extremely important because, again, 20 card decks means consistency. So it's going to be harder and more complicated to balance this because you don't have the variants do a lot of that work for you. There are, in fact, no resistances right now. My guess is, okay, resistance is the opposite of weakness. It's how much you reduce damage of a certain type by, right? So if the resistance on this Bulbasaur was 20 to water, right? It would take 20 less damage to water. This Vaporeon takes plus 20 electric, but it doesn't have resistance to anything, which I think is pretty interesting, right? We also can see that evolution is going to be in the game, by the way, because we've got a stage 1 for Eevee, and then we've got Vaporeon, which is an evolution thereof. So we know evolution is going to be in the game. We have no idea how that happens yet. Let's not even speculate on that in this video. We'll do a wild speculation video at some point relatively soon, and we'll make sure we get an expert in the game on for that. So resistance is just gone. I think the reason we make this change is so that we can introduce it later. Early in a game's life, when you're trying to make a new game, especially a game in a children-centric property like Pokemon, you very often don't want to overwhelm your audience with different keywords, with different things to do, and Pokemon is thus far, given that it has evolution, energy, benches, active Pokemon, your active deck, and this win condition, fairly complicated for a children's card game, right? Obviously, not only children are going to play this, as you're watching this, you are very likely an adult, right? And if you're not, welcome to the channel. I'll try and keep this kid appropriate, and my son, who's 8, will be on the channel sometime soon. So I think this change is basically saying, let's keep things simple. This is a thing we can add as a keyword later in the game. This is something we can do that would be cool down the line, but for now, let's keep it straightforward. All right, this is the big one, and this is the one that really, I think, changes the way we have to think about the game. It's why, my original plan was to play a bunch of the classic Pokemon TCG app, and we're still going to have our friend Gunny do that and take a look, but the lack of energy cards means that I want one of us to do that and one of us to not do that, so we can get a real feel for I want someone to be able to feel how it's different, and I want to be able to feel how this feels not having ever played with energy cards, if that makes sense. I want to understand, are we missing something, or is this just better? So energy cards, there are about 9 energy types, and they're each used to activate abilities. When we looked at cards, you could see each card had a generic energy cost, and then a specific type of energy, whether it be fire, whether it be dark, whether it be electric, so on and so forth. So there's significantly fewer energy types in the video game. For example, fighting can be rock or ground. It's sort of all of those. It's not just each individually. The fewer types means that you need fewer types of energy. However, 9 types of energy is still a fair amount. But there are none of these cards in the game. You still need energy, as you saw from those cards, to activate things, right? So how do we get that energy? We have energy zones. This is just a stockpile of energy you can attack to Pokemon. We don't know how this works. Excuse me. But I want to talk about, well, let's actually start with energy zones have a stockpile of energy. Almost everything about these zones is speculation. We're going to look at these abilities, and then I'm going to tell you what I think. So we've got an example of several abilities that talk about specific energy. So for the ability Size Shadow, once during your turn, you may take 1 psychic energy from your energy zone and attach it to a psychic Pokemon in the active spot. So you can take 1 per turn, just it happens, right? You get an extra energy from that zone. Who knows how that zone generates different energy? That's going to be what we have to determine, and how much of each different energy it can generate. If it can just sort of be like, wee, whatever, whenever, that's going to fundamentally change the game. Because Pokemon doesn't really have a color pie like Magic, where Magic you would play blue-red, right? Or white-blue or white-black or whatever. You get the idea. And that would be like, you would have to have mana specific to those. Instead, you would have your energies types, right? Like, so almost the same as mana, where you would try and find, like, let's say your main attackers are a couple psychic types. You would try and find other Pokemon that were that covered up the psychic type's weakness, but also use the psychic attack mana. This way, you would be able to control that. Mana is not the right word, energy card, but you get the idea here. So, in that case, if you can just generate any energy you want whenever you want, that's going to change things, right? You still probably want to generate similar types of energy because, for example, you take one fighting energy from Energy Zone and attach it to your Golem or Onyx. It doesn't say if that's benched or not, right? So if you have an active fighting type, but maybe you want to attach to a benched with that ability, maybe it makes sense to have that extra. Maybe it makes sense to have that extra type still in your same pool. And then we have Inferno Dance, which is flip 3 coins. It's good to see coin flip still go in the game. Not ideal, but like, so and a lot of card players I know complain about things like coin flips in their game. I promise you, whatever game you're playing has coin flips or dice rolls. They're just hidden from you. Take an amount of energy from your energy zone equal to the number of heads and attach it to your benched fire Pokemon, R is fire in this case, fire Pokemon in any way you like. So again, like if you don't have fire Pokemon, that ability is going to be wasted, right? If you'd like, or if your fire Pokemon can only have so much energy or has used for so much energy, that can be wasted energy. If you don't run enough of that energy type. So again, you have to make sure that you keep an eye on this. I'm very curious how this game is going to handle deck building and fundamentally what amounts to the color pie of Pokemon. All right, so here's a quick look at this, and this is directly from the PokeBeach article. In the limited gameplay footage that was revealed, there's a circle on the player one side, hopefully you can see that, bottom right of your screen, holding lightning energy, and a circle on player 2 side holding a psychic energy. Each one just has a simple energy in it. These appear to be the energy zones. They also appear to be after a 17-minute game. They promised us 5-minute games, but apparently some games can be longer. That seems reasonable to me. Hopefully games are not regularly 17 minutes. That would fundamentally be a betrayal of the promise of the game, but this one is 17 minutes. Who knows, maybe it's best of 3, maybe this is a tournament game, maybe they're testing different modes. There's, again, too much to speculate on. This is after a 17-minute game and right before player 1 attacks to win. The player 1 attack is going to completely wipe out the opponent and get you the end of the game. There looks to be space for at least 5 energy icons in each circle. So if you just take the space that one energy icon is taking and try and fill up the circle, there's space for at least 5. There's potential for more, obviously. Maybe they get smaller the more you have, but it's hard to say. It's also hard to imagine you're very often going to want to just leave 5 unused energy, unless you manage to get very unlucky with your draws. Further, you can also see a few Pokemon on each side with energy attached to them. Player 1 has 4 lightning energy, which is to say 2 attached to the Pikachu in play, and then 2 to the benched Pokemon down below. And then player 2 has 2 psychic energy in play, 1 on the bench and 1 to the active Pokemon. Good. That is, again, worth noting, this is still working in a fairly similar manner to what we'd expect from the previous game, except where the energy is coming from is different, and we don't actually know that. All good? That basically covers the differences. So here's what I expect. Largely, I expect a greatly simplified experience. That's what all this suggests. All these changes cumulatively suggest a greatly simplified experience. I also expect a lot of the entrenched Pokemon community to end up really, really annoyed by this. Generally speaking, when you love a game, when you've played it for a long time, when it's your thing, and people change it in like really fundamental ways, that causes a controversy. But they want a new and young audience. This game seems to be aimed at people who like Pokemon video games or like the Pokemon property. Those games and the property tend to be aimed at younger people, and that seems to be the audience this fast-paced game is trying to attract. Fundamentally, a nice simple way of saying this, as a high school teacher, this is the TikTok generation, where they want a quicker burst of information, a quicker burst of gameplay, and let me just tell you, as an adult who plays Marvel Snap, that really benefits busy adults. I don't have time to spend all night playing Snap or Pokemon or anything else anymore. a good 5 to 10 minute game that I can get 3-4 games in, kill that half hour to an hour that I actually had free. Instead of playing one game, I get to play 5-6 games in that 1 hour. I'm a happy person. So while that is a benefit to young people, it's also a really, really great benefit to adults. I fully expect one of the color types to be way too strong unless they really nail their color pie. Excuse me. In classic Pokemon, fairy types are fundamentally banned from competitive play. I expect something similar to happen here. Like, this is an extremely hard thing to balance unless they nail the energy stuff, because a lot of what will help balance is like Monocurve and Monoscrew, which should not exist with this energy type, which I think is going to be really interesting. I also expect EX Pokemon to be crazy, crazy strong. I think EX Pokemon are going to be the strongest thing in the game, because being able to lose one and lose 2/3 of the game versus 1/3 of the game for another is just too big a difference for them not to be absolutely insanely strong. My working assumption is that they will be game-winning cards. There are your top end. The biggest questions of things we know about revolve around energy and how fast and intuitive it will be. I expect that to be one of the first things I look at, one of the first things I'm trying to find when the game actually comes out. But what I'm really curious about that we don't know anything about is how evolutions and how many copies of each card you have, because those are going to fundamentally change how we have to look at the game of Pokemon. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It's time for questions of the day, and we're almost done. Derek Snaps wants to know what my Pokemon starter would be in real life, and my answer is Fennekin of the XY era. Completely adorable, fire type, keeps you warm, cuddle time, would absolutely love it. But also, because it's fundamentally a little fox, it reminds me of The Little Prince. If you've never read The Little Prince, it's a French children's story, and it's one of the most beautiful stories ever told. Don't watch the Netflix watch it if you've read it, right? There's a Netflix movie of it that's fine, but like reading it is an actual beautiful experience, and I cannot urge you enough to do that. Also, if you're not sure who Fennekin is, I will try and include a picture when I reference a Pokemon for anyone new. So, dear trainer, that would be you, viewer of video, how do you think evolutions are going to be handled in this game? Please let me know your expectations in the comments to this video. I will feature some answers in the video I do that is going to be coming up, called Wild Speculation about Pokemon Pocket. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of the channel so far, what you'd like to see, and we will see you soon for another episode of the Pocket Meta. Peace.